Convention Center in Washington, D.C. This is Washington Watch with Roland Martin.
At the top of our agenda this week, Mitt Romney dismisses 47% of Americans as moochers who will never take responsibility for their lives. Yeah, he actually said that. With the election just 44 days away, the efforts to both suppress and protect your vote go into high gear. Paging the next President Barack Obama will meet 4 rising African-American political stars. In the Washington Watch Roundtable, actor and activist Tatiana Ali, political activist Jeff Johnson, founder of UrbanCusp.com, and Washington Post contributor Raheel Tesfamariam, and political journalist and TheGrio.com contributor Joe Williams. All that plus, who told the biggest damn lie? It's all happening right now on Washington Watch. Welcome to Washington Watch. We're here this week at the Walter Washington Convention Center in Washington, D.C. for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's 42nd Annual Legislative Conference. And the reason there's a CBC at all is because we fought and won the right to vote. Now, getting that right to vote was a 100-year-long struggle that saw beatings, violence, and even deaths. And that fight for the right to vote isn't over. Half a century ago, blacks were prevented from voting by a variety of intimidating tactics, including literacy tests, poll taxes, dogs, police batons, and violence from angry white citizens. Today, the tactics are not as overt, and they involve lawyers, rich donors, the cutting of early voting hours, voter IDs, and other methods to suppress the vote. A new study out this month from researchers at the University of Chicago and Washington University in St. Louis projected that nearly 700,000 to 1 million minority voters under the age of 30 may be unable to cast a ballot in November because of voter ID laws in certain states. We're here today at the Emerging Leaders Town Hall, the evolution of politics and empowerment, and we're going to find out what some folks are doing to protect our vote and how you can get involved. Joining me are Lee Owens, politics editor for the Huffington Post, co-director of the Advancement Project, Judith Brown-Dianis, Impact co-founder and director, and executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus, Angela Rye, and Brandon Davis, national political director of the Service Employees International Union. Folks, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, panel, before I ask you a question, here's what a state rep in Pennsylvania had to say. The latest outrage, if you will, voter ID. Remember before, they had the leader there who said Mitt Romney is going to win Pennsylvania because of voter ID. Check out what this guy, Representative Metcalf, had to say.
As Mitt Romney said, I mean, we have 40-some% of the people that are living off the public dole, living off of their neighbors' hard work. And we have a lot of people out there that are too lazy to get off and to get up and get out there and get the ID they need. So, I mean, if individuals are too lazy, the state can't fix that.
Now, he said they're lazy. In Pennsylvania, first of all, the courts this week sent it back down to the lower courts to measure the impact. What's interesting is Pennsylvania folks said they pursued voter ID because of voter fraud. Yet when they went to court, they actually told the court they have no evidence of voter fraud, they have no studies showing it, and even if they got IDs, it would not impact voter fraud. Basically, their argument really has been a fraudulent one.
So, Advancement Project, we're counsel in that case in Pennsylvania, and there was no evidence of voter fraud, but there is evidence of voter suppression. That evidence is Terzai, who said it's for Mitt Romney. That evidence is that the state actually has no clue of how to get IDs in the hands of the people that don't have it. And we have to, let's put this in a larger context. What has happened in terms of voter suppression is because we turned out in record numbers in 2008. Young people turned out in record numbers in 2008. Latinos turned out in record numbers.
2 million more African Americans voted in 2008 compared to 2004. Black women voted at a higher rate than any other group in America in 2008.
Right, and when you look at Pennsylvania, it really is a good story about this because, in fact, the state says 760,000 people that are registered voters don't have the ID. We know it's more than that, but the margin of victory for Obama in 2008 was 660. So you have 43% of people in Philly don't have voter ID to vote. And so we know what this is about. This is politicians trying to manipulate the laws so that they can win.
Now, obviously, we are waiting for the final ruling in Pennsylvania. They kicked back the Texas law, said it was simply a violation. But, all right, some places you do have voter IDs. And so what are organizations doing to say, look, here's what the law is in some places. Let the lawyers fight other places. What's happening on the ground to make it possible to say, look, you still need to be able to register to vote?
Well, this coming Tuesday, September 25th, is National Voter Registration Day. There are organizations all over the country, including Impact, who are joining together to make sure that folks are equipped not only with their voter registration, if they've been purged from the rolls, to make sure they're re-registered and also have the requisite ID. At the end of the day, no, we shouldn't give up the fight. It is in litigation, but we need to be prepared. We need to prepare our communities. In addition to that, the Congressional Black Caucus members are going to be at their boards of election on Tuesday, getting folks from the community to come register to vote. We also have a website for those that are electronically inclined, and that's getvoteready.org.
Yeah, we've got a similar situation at SEIU. Our 2.1 million members made it very clear that we've got to figure out how to deal with this both in the immediate, which we're doing on the ground every day. We're communicating with voters. We've talked to over 1 million voters this year. Our members on doors every day.
Very quickly, Advance the Project, we've been doing calls with radio DJs, personalities, DJs from clubs, barbershops, et cetera, because we need to make sure that they have the accurate information that they need to give to the people that they have credibility with in the community. And so we keep doing these educational pieces so that folks are ready to talk to people about voting.
Have you been seeing, in terms of your reporting, grassroots folks saying, look, you know, we have to push, and get people to know what papers you need, things along those lines as well?
Absolutely, and I think a lot of what I've been seeing, you know, is that sort of last-minute push to make sure everyone is prepared in November to cast that vote, because, you know, obviously we know what it is. It's voter suppression at its best.
And the other point that I've been also making is, on the show, on radio, other places, is understand that your state is different than some other state. You have to know what you need in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, in Florida, in Texas, in Illinois, because it's different than other states.
Right. And to that end, what we've also been doing, and Judy's group has also joined in with the Advancement Project, every single Tuesday from a few weeks ago until November 6th, we're doing Super Tuesday Twitter town halls. We tweet those facts, state-specific, on what you need to bring to the polls, on your Secretary of State's website, exactly the kind of information that you need. There are several websites out there that give you and equip you with the right tools.
And it's important for people to understand that while there was an effort to pass these voter ID restriction laws in 33 states, there are only 3 new states that are requiring the really restrictive ID, which is Tennessee, Kansas, and then Pennsylvania, which has a question mark because we'll be back in court on Tuesday.
All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. When we come back, we will take a few questions from the audience. But first, here are the states where voter registration deadlines are coming up. I want you to write this down. I want you to tweet it, put it on Facebook. On October 6th, that is the deadline for South Carolina, for Arkansas, for Mississippi, for Tennessee, and for Rhode Island. Do not wait. Don't procrastinate. You have to act now. And remember, don't just focus on if you're living in a red state and you might say, well, Mitt Romney is going to win that state. Remember, when you go to vote, there are state reps, state senators, city council folks, commissioners, judges, DAs. There are a number of people who are on the ballot. You can't ignore any of those races. And when we come back, we'll talk about that. And also, we'll talk with Ben Crump, the attorney for Trayvon Martin's family, and he can explain to you as well what it means when you vote for down ballot races. We'll be right back.
Brought to you by the Ultralight HP NV4 Ultrabook, because living light matters.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. We're talking about the issue of voter suppression and what organizations are doing to move people to get registered, get their IDs, again, to be prepared for the upcoming deadlines. And so let's go right to our questions from the audience. Man, what's your name? Where you from? What's your question?
My name is Katia St. Fleur. I'm from the beautiful state of Florida. I want to let everybody know October 9th is the last day to register to vote in Florida. Well, my question is, as a people, as a group, what are we going to do to get people more involved locally? Because this has really become a national issue, but it started off as a local issue. People are not voting for their state legislators. People are not voting for their local elected officials. People don't even know what's going on in Tallahassee, for say, in Florida. And really, that's how this all came about. We have a state legislator that decided that they wanted to cut our early voting in half, and they got rid of one of our Sundays for early voting. So we don't have souls to the poll anymore. So what are we going to do to make sure that people know who their local elected officials are, who's running their state, who are making these decisions, because these decisions are turning into national issues.
Okay. And in essence, what we keep saying is voting is a continuum. You might focus on just the presidential election, but it's really what happens in that next election in 13 and 14 that could result what we have right now.
We saw that in 2010 during the last midterm election, particularly in Pennsylvania, where I'm from. We lost our governor, who was on his way out anyway, but we elected Governor Tom Corbett, the Republican, who has sort of been dismantling a lot of funding going to education and redirecting some of that funding to the prison system. So, you know, these are some of the small things that we don't necessarily keep track of, but these midterm elections are just as important as the presidential elections. And I think that, just to speak directly to the question, that I think it's a two-part thing. I think we have the grassroots level, we have the community-based organizations, we have the churches that need to step up a little bit more and educate the people. But also, I think it's up to the elected officials, it's up to these campaigns to get the word out. In 2008, President Obama got the word out, you know, in a great way. You know, it was unprecedented the way he ran his campaign, particularly how he used technology. That should have been repeated in 2010.
Those local races impact your life really more than, frankly, the presidential or congressional races.
I think the one thing that we have to remember, to the young lady that asked the question, you know, movements were never started because somebody asked for permission. We don't ever make a difference because someone granted us the authority to do that. So I would actually turn the question back on you and say, what are you going to do? Can you join us? We've talked about what our organizations are doing, and of course we'd love to have everyone in this room on board with that. But I really want to push back and say, what are you going to do? It's something, to your point, it's a local level thing. All politics is local. So what are you going to do locally to make that difference? We're going to stand with you.
I've talked about this for months, and Judith made the point, and I want to bring up right now Ben Crump. He is the attorney for Trayvon Martin's family. And Ben, the thing that I've said continuously, folks across this country, especially black folks, were ticked off that George Zimmerman was in charge, but the Seminole County DA is elected. Absolutely. They were ticked off that he was granted bail, but that judge is elected. And so we talk about mandatory minimums. Marissa Alexander being sentenced 20 years in prison, that judge is elected. Those folks who make the laws, they are elected. And so you see, as a lawyer there, the value of understanding local elections and how they affect us.
Absolutely, Roland. All politics are local. And when you really think about how important this vote is, Stand Your Ground is on the ballot in 21 states coming up in November. So we say no more Trayvons. Well, it starts with us. It starts with us rallying our base to say we're not going to let these Stand Your Ground laws come to our state. We need groups like Impact to counter the Alex of the world when they start pushing this legislation. Under the world, we didn't even know about Stand Your Ground until Trayvon Martin happened. And you saw that you can shoot a kid in the heart who's unarmed and be exonerated and not get your constitutional right to trial by jury. We cannot have that. We got to get all the 28 states that have it now to amend it, because if not, Roland Martin, we're going to see more young minorities shot and all the killers say, I was standing my ground.
So 21 states this November.
21 states.
So what we'll do is we'll actually find out the states where that is on the ballot. We'll be able to put that on the television to let folks know, because they have to understand that when they go to the polls. And that also is my point. People are going to go to the polls in November and only vote in the presidential race, but they're going to totally ignore a lot of those constitutional amendments that are far down on the ballot that also impact their lives.
And Roland, that's why your show is so important, because I think people just don't know. They don't understand that, oh, it's coming to my state and they only vote for Obama, the Democrats, and they don't do anything else. So it really is important. Everybody who's listening to Roland Martin on TV One say, hey, stand your ground on my ballot, because I don't want a Trayvon Martin in my community. I don't want my child to be the next Trayvon Martin.
All right, Ben Crump, we appreciate it. Thanks so much to the panel. Thank you also for joining us. When we come back, Mitt Romney said what and who told the biggest damn lie this week? We'll get into all of that with our Washington Watch Roundtable. Trust me, you don't want to miss our hot roundtable. Coming up next.